On the Kingaming festival, I went home with my fiancé Lucas to pay tribute to our ancestors. Suddenly, there was a car accident. I broke my lumbar vertebrae. I was in a coma for more than 3 months. When I woke up, I found that Lucas had married Emily, our adopted daughter. I was very sad. Fortunately, my university classmate Christopher was always by my side. He helped me get through the most painful days. In the end, I decided to marry him. On the 7th anniversary of our marriage, I heard him talking to a friend outside the private room. His friend asked him, "If Sophia finds out you married her for her money, will she divorce you? She always thought you helped her get over her depression. I never imagined you just wanted to make it easier for the man you liked to marry the woman she was with before." I held onto the doorknob. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. Tears welled up in my eyes. Christopher married me to help my sister. This truth made my heart plummet. It also completely dispelled my romantic illusions. This time I didn't make a scene. I just silently wiped away the tears in the corners of my eyes. I turned and left the club. Christopher's words as he turned reached my ears. "I've been chasing Emily for 10 years. I've done my best to satisfy whatever she wants." He continued, "Sophia is sensible and rich. Marry her. I won't lose out." When I came to my senses, I found myself standing on a brightly lit street. I called home. I decided to take your advice. I went back to Hong Kong City to take over the company. My parents asked me in surprise over the phone, "What's wrong, my dear? Why did you suddenly change your mind when you called last week? Didn't you say that we should choose someone capable from the existing senior management of the company to take over the company? Why have you suddenly changed your mind today, last weekend?" I had a 2-hour video chat with my parents. My mother mentioned that my father hasn't been feeling well in the past 2 years. He can't work too hard anymore. I promised Christopher before that I would stay in Cloud City with him. Before we got married, I even took $2 million from home to give to him to start his business. For the past 7 years, I have been working as his secretary at the company. I help him with all kinds of things. When we got married, Christopher said to me with deep affection that during the day, he was the serious CEO at the office. But at night, when he came home, he became my gentle and considerate husband. He was never mean to me. Everyone around me felt that he only liked me instinctively. Even I thought so. I always thought I was very happy. I was even willing to give up my career for my family. But now it seems that all of this has become ironic. I hailed a taxi. Just then, I saw that my sister had posted a friend request. The photo was full of beautifully wrapped gifts. She captioned it, "Someone is always thinking of you." In the middle of the photo was a glittering yellow diamond necklace. I remembered that Christopher had bought it at a charity auction 3 months ago. It had been all over the local news at the time. I had thought that Christopher had bid on the necklace to celebrate our 7th anniversary and given it to me, because yellow was my favorite color. Now that I thought about it, Emily had always loved yellow since she was a child. I was just imagining things. I took a taxi straight to the airport. On the way, I called my best friend Isabella. Isabella was very excited. "In the past few years, whenever I asked you out, you always said Christopher couldn't leave you. What made you change your mind today?" I laughed softly. I said, "I'm a little tired. I want to come and see you." Before boarding, Christopher called me. His tone was as gentle as always. "Sophia, are you stuck in traffic? Haven't I seen you for so long? Everyone is waiting for the aging process you mentioned last time." These 7 years, Christopher has made a name for himself in the technology circle in Cloud City, thanks to my connections. He is always surrounded by beautiful women, but he has never had an intimate relationship with anyone. His friends often joke that he is henpecked. Every time he praises our relationship in front of me, I pretended to be calm. I casually said, "Something came up at work. I had to go on a business trip with the project team." Christopher is very dedicated to his work. As long as it's work-related, he'll never stop me from getting involved. I used to travel for him a lot too, because it was hard and tiring work. No one else wanted to take it on. Christopher paused for a moment. He said tenderly, "Honey, you've worked hard. Take care of yourself." After hanging up the phone, I clenched my fists. My fingernails dug deep into my palms. The pain spread to my heart. I felt my chest tighten. It was as if a large wad of cotton had been stuffed in there. I had difficulty breathing. I could sense Christopher's happiness was fake, but I didn't want to point it out for the time being. After getting off the plane, Isabella came to pick me up. We went straight to the bar. We had a few rounds of drinks. Isabella noticed that I was a little distracted and noticed that I hadn't answered Christopher's phone calls 3 times. She asked, a little surprised, "You two had a falling out. In the 7 years, Isabella had often asked me out, at least 10 times, and every time she asked, I would say, Christopher doesn't have a very healthy stomach. After drinking, he always likes to drink my hangover soup. If I go out, no one will take care of him. Isabella is still single. She always says that after I had a serious illness, I became more caring, but I don't think it's a big deal. Loving someone means being willing to do anything for them. I told Isabella everything I had heard at the club. He clenched his fists in anger. This ungrateful man. If it weren't for you, he would never have achieved what he has today. I warned you long ago. Your sister is no good, but you never believed me. You thought people weren't that evil. Emily came to live with us when she was 7. Her father used to be my father's chauffeur. Her mother died in childbirth. Before he died, her father begged my father to take her in, and so she grew up in our home. My mother was always keen to help others. She often visited orphanages to look after the children. She didn't say much about it. Our family was well off. It wasn't a problem to take in an extra daughter. Emily stole my fiancé. My parents were a little unhappy about it, but seeing that I didn't react, they didn't blame her. When she was at school, she always competed with me for attention, but I really didn't expect her to have such a big plan behind my back. I sighed. I lifted the half glass of wine in front of me and gulped it down. The strong alcohol went down my throat. It burned hot in my stomach. My vision began to blur. Christopher's phone rang again. I pressed the answer button. His tone was a little resentful. Honey, what's going on? Why didn't you tell me you had arrived? In the past, I would have told him as soon as I arrived at my destination. This was the first time he had been so cold. I said indifferently. I was busy working on the plan as soon as I got off the plane. I didn't have time to tell you. I could hear the sound of singing and dancing in my ear. I think Christopher heard it too, but he hesitated for a moment. He didn't pursue it. He briefly told me a few things and hung up hastily. I could hear Emily laughing on the phone. The 7th anniversary was such a good opportunity. He definitely wanted to meet the person he had been thinking about. 2 days later, Christopher messaged me again. He said there was an important business banquet that night. He asked me to hurry up and finish what I was doing, go back and join him. In these 7 years, I have often accompanied Christopher to banquets. He has a weak stomach. I often helped him avoid drinking, but in the past 2 years, I've been attending fewer of these gatherings with him. He's been taking the managers from the business department instead. At first, I asked Christopher a few times if there was something I'd done wrong that had made him feel that way. Christopher looked at me deeply, hugged me gently, and said, "We've been married for so long. It's time we considered having a child." Actually, we had discussed having children as early as the first year of our marriage. At that time, I took the initiative to tell Christopher that I wanted a child, but he refused. He told me he would not consider having a child for 5 years. He wanted to focus all his energy on his career. He said he would rely on his own efforts to make me the happiest woman in Yun City. Since then, I have never mentioned this again. I was having lunch with Isabella at a seaside restaurant. The phone rang. I looked out to the sea. I saw a couple kissing passionately. My heart ached. Christopher had proposed to me on a beach like this, with the same blue sea. I responded coldly, "I have a lot of things to take care of here. Find someone else." I didn't expect the voice on the other end of the line to sound so resentful. "No way. She has to come to this banquet today," Christopher said, for the first time in a commanding tone. "I will send someone to take care of things. This banquet is very important to me. You must come back." In the past few days, Isabella helped me put together some of the documents I needed for the divorce. I still needed some important evidence, so I couldn't afford to fall out with Christopher. I agreed to Isabella's suggestion. As soon as he heard, he said he would accompany me back to Yun City. We finished eating slowly. Then we bought an evening flight to prepare to go back. All afternoon, my phone kept receiving messages from Christopher. He kept urging me, "Have you left yet? What time will the flight arrive? I'll have the driver pick you up. Hurry up and get back to me. You need to set aside 2 hours to get ready. Don't dawdle. Forget about work for now. This is the most important thing." I simply replied with 3 words, "Got it." Emily hasn't worked since her wedding. She usually likes to go shopping. She also does some work for a self-media platform. She mainly shares her outfits and daily life. While we were waiting for the plane, I saw her new vlog. In the video, Emily was standing in the beauty salon where I usually get my hair done. She was wearing the latest couture dress from Chanel. Christopher had sent me the dress to try on. I was supposed to wear it to the banquet tonight. I don't know how it ended up on her. 10 minutes after the vlog was posted, The number of comments from fans exceeded 999. Emily has been a self-media influencer for 5 years. She has accumulated more than 100,000 followers. Most of her followers praise her for living a happy and wealthy life. I have to admit, my ex-boyfriend is indeed much better than Christopher, Emily once told me. After she got married, her husband would give her 200,000 yuan as pocket money every month. However, they never had children after marriage. The reason is not clear to me. The parents of the Johnsons and my parents have always been good friends over the years. Because of their children, they have talked to my parents several times. My parents were already unhappy about Emily stealing my ex-boyfriend. Naturally, they ignored them. I showed the video to Isabella. She's a famous lawyer. She immediately saved the evidence. Before boarding the plane, Emily called me. On the phone, Emily said to me with a tone of grievance, "I've had a fight with Nathan. I heard that you and your brother-in-law are going to a reception tonight. Can I come with you?" She always did, always putting herself down. As a child, I didn't quite understand her character. As a result, she complained about me to my parents several times. At first, I couldn't explain myself. Later, I learned to find witnesses and keep evidence. He had obviously arranged everything and pretended to ask my opinion. I sneered twice and answered, "I don't have time anyway. Why don't you go with Christopher?" Emily answered immediately on the phone, "No, I can't. There are so many things I can't handle. Why don't you go with your brother-in-law? I'll tag along and learn a thing or two." I hung up the phone. There was no response. On the other end of the line, I could hear heavy breathing. I thought, Christopher and White Moonlight should be quite comfortable without me for the next 2 days. Emily is not sure. I have always been a smart person. I guessed that Emily would not show up at the banquet directly. She would definitely pretend to ask for my opinion. I contacted Nathan's secretary. I had helped him out a few times before. His secretary had a good impression of me. The secretary told me, "Nathan flew to the US 3 days ago to develop new business for the company. He's not home." When I got back, the driver took me directly to the beauty salon. I showed the clerk a photo of the dress. The clerk told me that the dress had already been given to a client by Christopher. There was nothing I could do. I had to pick one at random. When I arrived at the party, it had already started 20 minutes ago. As soon as I entered the restaurant, I saw Emily, a little drunk. She was leaning in Christopher's arms. They looked very intimate. Their movements were sweet. From a distance, they looked like a couple in love. They stood in the middle of the crowd, holding glasses in their hands. There were a lot of people around them. I then understood. It turns out that the host of this banquet is the owner of Cloud City Media. Emily's smile on her face says it all. She wants to use this opportunity to get to know important people in the media industry, to pave the way for her future entry into the entertainment industry. Emily has dreamed of becoming an actress since she was a child. Unfortunately, her talent is average. Her art exam scores did not allow her to get into a good art college. After graduation, she tried to audition. For 2 whole years, she got no results. She always thought that her parents did not give her a good enough opportunity. But everyone knows that being an actor is not just about connections. Isabella saw the two of them holding hands in public. She was furious. She wanted to rush up to them and ask for an explanation. But I held her back. I knew Nathan's character. He would never let his wife flaunt herself in public, so Emily must be pretending to be someone else. I gently pulled Isabella. We quietly walked to the back of the crowd. We watched Emily and Christopher raise their glasses together, responding to the compliments. Someone said to Christopher, "Chris's sister is really pretty. With looks like that, it wouldn't be hard for Chris to break into the acting industry. Just invest in a few more movies, and she'll definitely become famous." Emily laughed happily. Christopher was happy to see her, so he raised his glass and said, "Then I'll trouble everyone. With the investment, I'll definitely do my best." Just then, Isabella took her phone and led me quickly to their side. I asked coldly, "Christopher, who told you to invest my money?" I smiled and picked up a glass of wine. There was no loud argument as they had expected. Instead, they just said calmly, "You guys are so boring. You didn't even wait for me to join you." I suddenly noticed that Emily's style of dress had changed. It was no longer the princess style of a rich girl. Instead, it had become a youthful and lively style of a beautiful girl. As soon as Christopher saw me, immediately let go of Emily's hand. His face showed a look of panic. His eyes were full of surprise and unease. When did you get here?" Emily didn't seem to expect me to be so calm. She held a wine glass, smiling, walked up to me, greeted me, "Sister, you're here. The surrounding partners were chatting. Suddenly, they all looked at us in surprise. Christopher's face turned ugly, first green and then purple. Before I could say anything, the business associates who knew me spoke first. So Chris's secretary is the sister of that beauty. What did those words mean just now? Is secretary, Sophia, also a shareholder in Chris's company? Over the years, I have always been introduced to people as Christopher's secretary. In order to spare his face, I have never revealed my true identity, but this time I decided not to back down. Christopher saw that I was about to speak, and his face suddenly changed. He looked at me nervously, trying to read my expression. I responded directly. I am not a shareholder of Chris's company. I helped him start his company with my money. I finished calmly. Everyone around me was stunned. I could hear the sound of people whispering. What is going on? Who is Chris's secretary? Everyone has talked about it before. He has become a tech upstart in Cloud City in just a few years. There must be strong support behind him. Look at these two women. They don't look anything alike. Are they really sisters? Emily saw that I had embarrassed Christopher. She was a little angry. She grabbed my wrist, whispered to me, "You go out with me first. Can't we talk about this at home?" I saw that Emily was wearing a yellow diamond necklace around her neck. She sneered twice. I asked her, "The necklace around your neck was given to you by Christopher, wasn't it?" Emily immediately shook her head and said, "How could that be? I bought it myself." I turned my head and stared at Christopher. He was so nervous that he couldn't speak. Big beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. This incident had always been a thorn in Christopher's heart. Back then, he was the one who helped me get over my broken heart. When he said he wanted to start a business, I gave him the startup capital without hesitation. All these years of comfortable living may have made Christopher forget what he was like in the beginning. Isabella snorted coldly next to him. She brought up the news of Christopher buying this necklace back then. Everyone present knew exactly what was going on. They immediately understood my implied meaning. Emily was so angry that her face turned red. She immediately reached out to take off the necklace around her neck. But Christopher stopped her. Christopher said to Emily with concern, "Don't do that. What I give you is yours." Seeing how well they got along, I could no longer hold back my anger. I directly revealed Emily's identity. "The little princess in front of you is Nathan's wife and my adopted daughter, just as I gave Christopher the money when he started his business." The word adopted also became a thorn in Emily's heart. Emily is usually spoiled by everyone. How can she bear this kind of injustice? She immediately rushed over, raised her glass and smashed it at me. Just as the glass was about to hit my head, Isabella hurried over to stop her, but she was too late. Blood ran down my face and dripped onto the carpet. Isabella was so anxious that she almost cried. The people around them panicked when they saw the situation. I have been fainting at the sight of blood since I was a child. As soon as I see blood dripping, I feel uncomfortable. Isabella saw me covering my chest. She was so anxious that she almost cried. She quickly helped me. She shouted, "Call an ambulance quickly. Emily accidentally hurt me." She was so scared that she cried. Christopher saw this, quickly took her away. Before leaving, he said to Isabella, "I'm worried that Emily will have problems on her own. With you by Sophia's side, I'll feel at ease." I watched him leave nervously. His back grew farther and farther away. A feeling of bitterness welled up in my heart. Tears welled up in the corners of my eyes. My vision began to blur. Isabella cried and held me tightly. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. Her tears fell on my face drop by drop. I could feel the warmth of her hands and the beads of sweat from her nervousness. I could feel her inner panic. She was afraid of losing me, worried that I would faint from the heart palpitations. Before I completely lost consciousness, I heard the sound of the doctor rushing in. Isabella tugged at the doctor, repeatedly urging, "Please be gentle. She is particularly afraid of pain." In the last moments before I lost consciousness, I took Isabella's hand and said to her, "Don't worry, it's okay. I've been with Christopher for 7 years. All this time I felt like I was repaying him for the time he spent with me. Today, when I saw that he chose Emily without hesitation, I told myself, this debt has finally been paid. From now on, I will only live for myself." When I woke up again, it was already the morning of the next day. I was lying in a hospital room. I was being given an infusion. The white walls of the room were hurting my eyes a little. Isabella was holding my hand. She was leaning over the side of the bed. She looked very tired. I looked at the empty bedside table. I frowned. My movement woke Isabella up. Isabella looked at me and asked with concern, "Are you feeling better? "Are you in any pain?" I smiled and waved my hand. "I just have a bit of a headache. Otherwise, I'm fine," Isabella said a little angrily. "While you were unconscious, Christopher called you twice. He told me to find the best specialist to treat you, but he couldn't come himself. He said your good sister cried all night last night. Her husband wasn't at home. She needs someone to keep her company." I looked at Isabella, who was grinding her teeth in anger. I couldn't help but laugh. I took her hand and said, "That thing we agreed on before, we can start now." Isabella nodded seriously and went out to buy me breakfast. He was very quick. It took less than half an hour. Emily's photo from the banquet was posted on Weibo by 3 well-known local Big Vitakes. In fact, after the banquet last night, someone under Emily's Weibo account asked if she was Nathan's wife in Cloud City. Everyone knows that the Johnson family's daughter-in-law cannot appear in public. This is the Johnson family rule. Over the years, Nathan has brought Emily to all the banquets, but there has never been a positive photo of President Johnson's wife on the internet. Emily replied below, "This is all a misunderstanding. However, Big Vitakes revelations are usually not unfounded." Just 15 minutes after the Weibo was posted, Emily's Weibo shot to the 3rd place on the search list. Emily anxiously closed the comment section and posted a statement saying that all unconfirmed rumors are false. She will pursue legal responsibility according to the law. After this statement was posted, some of Emily's loyal fans also came forward to defend her. Isabella saw that the public opinion had shifted. She asked a well-known blogger to post a video of Emily wearing the necklace that Christopher had given her to a dinner party. After this news broke, Emily's image of being happy and content completely collapsed. She lost control of her emotions. She frantically replied to netizens in her comments section. "It was just a necklace that looked similar. Why can't it be from my husband? My husband and I have a deep and loving relationship. There is no way I would be interested in some tech startup. Please calm down. Let me explain. Don't let people with ulterior motives take advantage of the situation." Emily was still trying to defend herself. Then someone who had been at the party came forward. They revealed what she had done to me at the ballroom the previous night. The person didn't know who I really was. They even called me Chris's secretary. I was about to edit a reply on Weibo when my ex-boyfriend Nathan suddenly called. I hadn't received a call from this number in almost 10 years. I picked up the phone. Nathan's voice was cold. Nathan asked me, "Is it true that you started all this online?" He knew my character. He also knew how I worked. So he thought that way. It wasn't unreasonable. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Nathan continued, "What are you really thinking? Can you tell me?" I knew Nathan's character. He has never tolerated any flaws. He must have been half believing when he saw the news. However, he left me without a word. This incident has always been like a thorn in my heart. I don't want to say anything more with him. I just calmly replied, "You'll see." I was about to hang up. Nathan added, "I'm flying to Cloud City tonight. If you have anything to do, let's talk when we meet." Before I could respond, the phone disconnected. A busy tone came through. Then, $2 million was deposited into my account. The memo said, "Treatment fees." I knew Nathan would do everything he could to protect the Johnson family's reputation. He would definitely try to stop me from going public, so I had to hurry. I had to get ahead of the game. I immediately called Isabella after receiving the news. Isabella immediately posted the private investigator's findings online. The stock prices of the Johnson family and Christopher's company suddenly started fluctuating. Christopher kept calling me, but I didn't answer any of them. When my parents saw the trending topic online, they worriedly reminded me to take care of myself. I reassured them not to worry. I'll go home as soon as I finish what I'm doing. Seeing that I hadn't answered my phone for a long time, Christopher hurried to the hospital. He held a bouquet of my favorite sunflowers. He smiled as he walked over to my bedside. He asked with concern, "How have you been feeling these past 2 days? Did the doctor change your dressing on time?" He reached out to pull me. I instinctively pulled back. Seeing Christopher's furrowed brow, I understood that he was feeling very uncomfortable. His phone kept ringing nonstop, but he didn't answer at once. In the end, he simply turned it off. He brought my favorite lunch from Linjiang building. He carefully arranged the food. After hesitating for a while, he said to me, "There is nothing between Emily and I. Don't believe those rumors on the internet. Give me some time. I'll give you a reasonable explanation. After your sister married into the Johnsons' family, they kept pressuring her to have children. She developed a mild depression. She can't be provoked. I was worried about her that day. That's why I went with her. Christopher hadn't finished speaking when I interrupted him. That's enough. Stop. I don't want to hear it. The ward fell silent. Christopher's face was tense and he couldn't hide it. I didn't want to hear him lie to my face again. I told Isabella to hand him the divorce papers. Sign them. Then we can part on good terms. And you can be with someone you really like. Hearing the word divorce, Christopher's heart tightened. His hands trembled uncontrollably. Actually, the private investigator found out something else this time. But in order to save everyone's face, I never let Isabella say anything. I saw that Christopher refused to sign, so I continued. I know everything about you and Emily. Don't keep it from me. If you sign, we can make this go away. If you don't, I won't hold back. Christopher flew into a rage, his eyes red. He rushed up to me. He grabbed my wrist and demanded, "What do you want? Do you have to ruin me to be happy?" I knew how hard Christopher had worked over the years in order to sign the contract. He often got drunk, but that was no excuse for him and Emily to hurt me together. I didn't tell him the secret. Instead, I took out my phone and played the conversation I had heard between them at the club's entrance on our 7th anniversary. Christopher subconsciously tried to grab my phone, but Isabella immediately got in front of me and stopped him. Isabella shouted angrily, "She's already hurt. What more do you want?" At that moment, the door to the hospital room was pushed open. Nathan walked in, carrying a lot of gifts in his hands. He walked quickly up to me and took my phone away from me. Then he grabbed Christopher by the collar and asked coldly, "The person you've always liked is my wife. Did you put Emily in my bed in the first place?" In fact, it was all a trap set by Christopher and Emily. Nathan and I grew up together. We were very close in our freshman year. He confessed his love for me in all seriousness. We were together for 5 years. I was only unconscious for 3 months. He hastily married Emily. Everyone around him said that Nathan had changed his mind. Unable to resist loneliness, he had sex with Emily. As a result, Emily became pregnant, but because Emily was weak, probably because she was too tired on their wedding day, the baby was lost. Now it seems, this was a setup from beginning to end. Emily is my adopted daughter, but she has no right to inherit the family fortune. If she marries Nathan, she can live a life of ease for the rest of her life. Such a marriage an opportunity. Of course she doesn't want to miss it. This is what she seriously planned. I immediately told Nathan, "Emily is pregnant. The child is most likely Christopher's," because Christopher had already accompanied Emily to the hospital to register the birth. If the baby isn't his, he doesn't need to put his name on the file. Before Christopher could respond, Nathan swung and punched. Christopher's mouth bled, but he didn't back down. He immediately wrestled with Nathan. Isabella quickly called the security guard. They separated the two. In the end, Christopher was kicked out of the scene. Nathan has been good at sports since he was a child, so he wasn't hurt. He moved a chair and sat next to my bed. He took out a check from his wallet and handed it to me. "Name your price. I'll buy all the evidence." I glanced at him twice and shook my head. "Do I look like someone who needs your money?" The Johnsons have always valued their reputation. I remember when Nathan first decided to marry Emily instead. His parents were resolutely opposed at first. Now I see Nathan trying to solve the problem with money. I can actually understand his thinking, but I can't accept it. Nathan could see my attitude. He sighed and said to me, "I understand what you mean. I will handle this matter properly." After that, he didn't say anything else. He walked quickly away. That evening, the Johnsons issued a statement saying that Nathan had signed a divorce agreement with Emily. Emily would have nothing more to do with the Johnsons in the future. Emily was abandoned by the Johnsons. She was very angry. She sent me dozens of messages accusing me, but I didn't reply to any of them. In the end, she went to the hospital. Even though it was everyone's bedtime, she stood in front of the door to the patient room. Standing up straight, she shouted, "Sophia, come out here. Hiding is no good. Did you do it and you're afraid to admit it?" Isabella was so angry. She raised her hand and was about to go out and hit her, but I stopped her. I told Isabella to take a picture of her like this, since she doesn't care about her image. "Don't blame me for posting everything exactly as it happened," netizens said. This is the first time they've seen Emily, who is usually gentle as water, act so fierce. Finally, Christopher came to the hospital to pick up Emily. He hugged her tightly, as if guarding an extremely precious treasure. Before leaving, Christopher said to me with a worried face, "Don't provoke her anymore. She's really sick." I looked at him and sighed deeply. "You're taking her away in front of everyone. That's really impulsive." Christopher froze for a moment. When he looked at me, the panic in his eyes quickly gave way to determination. He said, "I can't think about anything else." I can't let her suffer alone. They finished talking and left. I forced a smile. I felt this was all quite absurd. This green hat had been on my head for 7 or 8 years. I can't believe I didn't realize it until now. After this farce was over, I fell into a deep sleep. I dreamed of the day I married Christopher. He looked at me with deep affection. He confessed his love for me. He said he would be good to me forever. Emily and Nathan were also there that day. I really couldn't understand it. How could he act so in love with me in front of his beloved? Early the next morning, I sent someone to buy Christopher's company. He was really anxious now. When he found me, I had already been discharged from the hospital and returned home. I changed the locks and set a new code. Together with Isabella, I packed his things. We threw them into the courtyard. Christopher kept knocking on the door. "Sophia, open the door. Can we talk? Your sister is sick." I did it just to reassure her. "I know you're really angry this time. I will definitely keep my distance from her in the future. Don't be angry. Okay, I founded the company myself. You can't take it away from me. I always thought Christopher had deep feelings for Emily, but now it seems that's not the case." When he realized he was about to lose the company, he spoke quite honestly. I responded with a faint from behind the door. It immediately became quiet outside. I felt that there was suddenly a thick wall between Christopher and me in just a few days. No matter how hard he knocked on the door and expressed his guilt and apologies, I pretended not to hear. 7 years of relationship, in the end, it was his lies that drained it all away. Now I've decided to let go, but he doesn't want to. Isabella told me. She sent the divorce papers 3 times. Christopher tore them up without even looking at them. The phone suddenly rang. Christopher hung up impatiently at first, but the other person kept calling. He really had no choice. He finally answered the phone. "Chris, where are you? I feel really dizzy. I need to go to the hospital. Can you come back and pick me up?" From the video intercom, I can see Christopher's face on the video intercom. He hesitates for 2 seconds. Then he says firmly, "I have to deal with something right now. Take 2 pills to help you feel better." There is crying on the other end of the line. "Chris, you said you would never leave me. Please come back." Intermittent sobs could be heard on the other end of the line. Christopher's prepared words of firm refusal got stuck in his throat. He couldn't say a word. It was 1 a.m. I saw Emily post a status update. In the photo, she was lying in a hospital bed. She and a man were holding hands. I immediately recognized Christopher's hand. There was a mole on the palm of his hand that I could just make out. I recognized it immediately. Emily wrote in the text, "I know, no matter what, you will never leave me." I calmly gave him a like. Christopher sent a message shortly afterwards. "Emily is sick. She cries and says she wants to kill herself. I really don't know what to do. Let's meet tomorrow. We can talk about it." Okay. I don't understand why, at this point, Christopher still has to send me messages to explain all this. He had helped Emily behind my back. Now I was asking for a divorce and giving up on him. That was only natural, but he refused to let go. I simply replied, "Oh." Then I turned off my phone and went to bed. The next day, Emily called even earlier than Christopher. She was desperate for me to divorce Christopher as soon as possible. I replied coldly, "I've already prepared the divorce papers. Tell Christopher to sign them quickly." As I expected, that day Christopher came to see me with a large pile of gifts, begging me not to divorce. He sat outside my house all night, refusing to leave. It was as if he wanted to make amends. He sent me lots of expensive jewelry, but I didn't take any of it. Trash belongs in the trash, and gifts from trash belong in the trash. In the following days, I devoted all my energy to acquiring Christopher's company. Eventually, Christopher had to sign. Before leaving, Christopher reluctantly held me back. He asked, "Do you think we can go back to the way things were?" I smiled and handed him an envelope. I said, "You and she both have children. Why would you want to go back?" Christopher was beside himself with anger. He tried to explain, "It's not what you think. I have nothing to do with that child." I had no choice but to close the door on him with a slam. Christopher's company was gone. He and Emily had a huge fight. I heard that Emily was so angry that she went to the hospital and had an abortion. After I finished my business in Cloud City, I went straight to the court to file for divorce. Then I went home. My parents came to the airport to pick me up. They told me that tomorrow they would announce that I would become the heir of the Johnson family. At the same time, they would issue a statement to expel Emily from our family. She would no longer be my family's adopted daughter. The next day, my parents threw a welcome home banquet for me. They officially announced that I would take over the Johnson family. Emily found out she was disinherited. She was furious and went on a rampage under our company's Weibo account. In the end, she was forced to quit the internet. Christopher kept calling and messaging me. He said he had misjudged Emily in the face of profit. His love was nothing. I didn't reply to his messages, and I didn't answer the phone. I devoted myself to my career. After a period of hard work, I successfully helped the Johnson family enter the media industry. After the success, the first thing I did was to silence Emily in the industry. I wanted to make sure she couldn't get back up. After all that, I took Isabella on a half-month trip abroad. When I got back, Christopher and I had our divorce hearing. There were no heated arguments. There was no tussle. The divorce ended much faster than I expected. Christopher simply agreed to give up everything. I took care of the house in Cloud City and went home. Before I left, I sent him proof of Emily's true condition. After all, we had been together for 8 years. I didn't want him to continue being deceived by Emily. Christopher and I have had no contact since then. I heard later that, after divorcing me, he became depressed. He drank all day to get drunk. He also couldn't find a new job. After losing everything, Emily still wanted to maintain her previous high-spending lifestyle. If Christopher didn't give her money, she threatened to kill herself. After going through so much, Christopher's patience and enthusiasm for youth had long since worn thin. Facing Emily's daily harassment, he began to feel annoyed. He stopped caring about her. He avoided her. He even laid hands on her. Christopher had once loved his lover, who had brought him freshness and excitement. Now he hated her. When I heard the news, I felt indescribable emotions. Perhaps a little schadenfreude, but more of an indescribable mix of emotions. None of this has anything to do with me anymore. I want to say goodbye to the past. Welcome to a new life, I believe. The days ahead will only get better. I will love myself and live life to the fullest.